Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Heroes of Faith. If stories like this one, real lives transformed by radical obedience to God, encourage you and strengthen your walk with the Lord, then right now, before we begin, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support helps us keep sharing these powerful testimonies around the world. Let's dive in. Imagine a young woman born into the lap of luxury, a princess with every comfort the 13th century could offer. Silk gowns, golden goblets, servants at her beck and call, yet she chose to lay it all down for the sake of Christ and the poorest of the poor. This is the story of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, a true heroine of faith whose short life of only 24 years still echoes through the centuries as one of the greatest examples of Christian charity the Church has ever known. Today, we're going to walk through her remarkable journey step by step, moment by moment, and we'll pause along the way to see exactly where God used her in extraordinary ways. So settle in, because this is going to be a beautiful, heart-stirring 20-minute journey. Elizabeth was born on July 7, 1207, in the Kingdom of Hungary, most likely in Pozsony, what we now call Bratislava, Slovakia, though some traditions point to Sarospatak. Her father was the powerful King Andrew II, and her mother was Queen Gertrude of Morania, a woman of deep Bavarian nobility. From the very beginning, Elizabeth's life was woven into the political fabric of medieval Europe. Kings didn't raise daughters just to love them. They raised them to seal alliances. So when Elizabeth was only 4 years old, she was sent far from home to the court of the Landgrave of Thuringia in central Germany. There, at the magnificent Wartburg Castle, perched high on a hill overlooking the forests, she was betrothed to the young prince Ludwig, later Ludwig IV, who was about the same age. She grew up in that castle as if it were her own, learning the ways of German nobility while her Hungarian roots remained deep in her heart. Tragedy struck early and shaped her forever. When Elizabeth was just 6, back in Hungary, her mother, Queen Gertrude, was assassinated by rebellious nobles who resented the queen's favoritism toward her German relatives. The little princess, already separated from her parents, felt the sting of loss and the fragility of earthly power. Instead of turning bitter, that pain drove her deeper into prayer. Even as a child at Wartburg, she was known for slipping away to the castle chapel, kneeling for long hours, and showing unusual compassion to the servants and the poor who gathered at the gates. God was already stirring something in her young heart, a hunger for something more lasting than crowns and castles. By the time she turned 14 in 1221, the political alliance was sealed in marriage. Elizabeth and Ludwig were wed in a grand ceremony at Wartburg. To everyone's delight, it wasn't just a political match, it became a genuine love story. Ludwig adored his bride. He was strong, just, and deeply respectful of her faith. Together, they had 3 children: Hermann, who would one day inherit the land, Sophie, who would become a duchess and carry the faith forward, and little Gertrude, born later. Life at court was busy: feasts, tournaments, diplomatic visitors, but Elizabeth never let the glamour distract her from God. Then, in 1223, everything shifted in a beautiful way. Franciscan friars, fresh from the preaching of Saint Francis of Assisi himself in Italy, arrived in Thuringia. Their message of holy poverty, radical love for the poor, and joyful imitation of Christ set Elizabeth's soul on fire. She began to change her lifestyle dramatically. She traded her fine silks for simple woolen garments. She started distributing alms every single day: bread, meat, clothing from the castle gates. Hundreds of the poorest people in the region knew to come to Wartburg because the young Landgravine would personally meet them, look them in the eyes, and serve them with her own hands. Ludwig not only allowed it, he supported it wholeheartedly. He once told her, "I want to share in the eternal reward you are earning." God was using Elizabeth's royal position like a megaphone to proclaim the gospel of mercy to an entire region. One of the most famous moments where God clearly intervened is the beloved Miracle of the Roses. The story goes like this. During a time of great need, Elizabeth would secretly fill her apron or cloak with bread and wine from the castle stores to carry down the steep path to the poor in the villages below. One day, accounts differ on whether it was her husband Ludwig or her brother-in-law Henry who met her on the path. They stopped her and demanded, "What are you carrying?" Fearing they would scold her for wasting royal provisions, Elizabeth hesitated. Then, trusting God, she opened her cloak. Instead of bread, beautiful red and white roses tumbled out, roses in a season when no flowers bloomed. The fragrance filled the air. Her accuser was stunned, picked up a rose, and let her continue on her way. That miracle wasn't just about hiding charity, it was God publicly declaring his pleasure with her obedience. He took ordinary bread, meant for the hungry, and turned it into a sign of heavenly beauty and provision. Elizabeth's simple act of love became a testimony that still inspires artists, poets, and believers today. In 1226, disaster hit Thuringia hard. Floods, famine, and plague swept the land while Ludwig was away representing Emperor Frederick II at the Imperial Diet in Cremona. Elizabeth stepped into leadership with courage that amazed everyone. She opened the castle granaries, sold royal jewels and robes to buy food, and personally nursed the sick. She established feeding stations and even began building hospitals. Historians say she fed nearly 1,000 people a day at one point. God used her administrative gifts and her tender heart to keep an entire province from collapsing into despair. While others hoarded, she gave. While nobles complained, she served. Her faith became the anchor for thousands. Then came the crushing blow that would test her like nothing else. In September 1227, Ludwig, only 27 years old, set out to join the Sixth Crusade. He never made it. He contracted a fever in Otranto, Italy, and died on September 11th, just weeks before their third child was born. When the news reached Elizabeth at Wartburg, she collapsed in grief. Her own recorded words echoed down the centuries. "He is dead. He is dead. It is to me as if the whole world died today." At only 20 years old, she was a widow with 3 small children and suddenly vulnerable. Ludwig's brother Henry Raspa took over as regent for young Hermann. Court politics turned ugly. Some accused Elizabeth of squandering the treasury on the poor. Tensions rose over her dowry. Under the guidance of her strict spiritual director, the priest Conrad von Marburg, whom the Pope himself had appointed to protect her, she made the painful decision to leave Wartburg. She moved to Marburg in Hesse, taking only what she needed. There, in 1228, she made solemn vows of poverty, obedience, and chastity before Conrad, and formally embraced the spirit of the Franciscan Third Order as a laywoman. She used the remainder of her dowry to build a hospital dedicated to St. Francis right in Marburg. And she didn't just fund it, she lived it. Elizabeth rolled up her sleeves and became a nurse. She bathed lepers, dressed wounds, fed the dying, and comforted the orphans. She slept on a simple straw mat. She ate the plainest food. Her companions, a few loyal women who joined her, marveled at her humility. One famous story from this period shows God's presence so vividly. Elizabeth once brought a leper named Helios into the marital bed she had once shared with Ludwig. When her mother-in-law discovered it and ran to tell Ludwig, he pulled back the covers expecting horror, but instead saw the crucified Christ. God opened his eyes to see Jesus in the suffering. That vision confirmed what Elizabeth lived every day. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Conrad was demanding. Some accounts say he imposed harsh penances and even physical discipline to test her obedience. But Elizabeth submitted with grace, believing God was refining her like gold. She sent 2 of her children to be raised by relatives so she could serve without distraction, keeping only the youngest with her at times. She founded another hospital and a Franciscan house in Eisenach. Her health began to fail from the constant labor and simple living, but her joy never dimmed. On November 17, 1231, at just 24 years old, Elizabeth fell ill with a high fever. She received the last rites, offered her final sufferings to God, and peacefully passed into the arms of her Savior in her small room beside the hospital. Almost immediately, miracles began at her tomb. The blind received sight. The lame walked. The sick were healed. People flocked to Marburg. Pope Gregory IX ordered a thorough investigation. 4 handmaidens who had lived with her gave sworn testimony, recorded in the precious document called the Libellus de Dictis Quatuor Ancillarum. After years of scrutiny, on May 27, 1235, in Perugia, Italy, the Pope canonized her as a saint. Only 4 years after her death, her body was placed in a golden shrine in the beautiful Gothic church built in her honor, the Elisabethskirche in Marburg, which became one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Europe for centuries. God used Elizabeth in so many powerful ways. He used her royal platform to model generosity when the powerful usually ignored the weak. He used her grief after losing her husband to birth an even deeper dependence on him. He used her humility in the hospital to touch the untouchable and show the world that true greatness looks like a princess washing the feet of lepers. He used her short life to ignite a movement. Hospitals named after her sprang up across Europe. The secular Franciscan order grew, and her example inspired countless men and women to serve the poor in Christ's name. Even today, she is the patron saint of Catholic charities, hospitals, nurses, bakers, brides, widows, the homeless, and the falsely accused. Her feast day is November 17th, and her legacy reminds us that one surrendered life can change history. Friends, what can we learn from Saint Elizabeth of Hungary? That faith isn't cheap. It costs comfort, reputation, and sometimes family approval, but the reward is seeing Jesus face to face in the suffering around us. God is still looking for modern Elizabeths, people willing to open their hands, their homes, their resources, and say, "Use me." Whether you're a parent, a professional, a student, or someone feeling ordinary, ask the Lord today, how can I serve the least of these right where I am? Because when we do, He still works miracles. Maybe not roses from bread, but transformed hearts, healed relationships, and hope poured out. Thank you so much for spending these 20 minutes with me on the life of this incredible heroine of faith. If Elizabeth's story stirred something in your spirit, please subscribe right now if you haven't already. Leave a comment telling me your favorite part or which hero of faith you want to hear next, and share this video with someone who needs encouragement today. Your likes, comments, and shares help these stories reach more people who need to know that God still uses ordinary, well, in her case, extraordinary, people just like you and me. Until next time, keep your eyes on Jesus, serve with love, and remember, the same God who turned bread into roses for Elizabeth is the same God walking with you right now. God bless you richly. See you in the next video. This story is in a soft copy book. If you want to get it, check the description for details of how to get it.